serial Hacohen, truth surveyor. Deep in the shadows, the stories unwind, cults and conspiracies left behind. With the mic in hand and questions bold, secrets and scandals start to unfold. Freedom of thought, he's shining the light, exposing the dark, making wrongs right.
That was an incredible intro. I love it.
I'm glad you like it.
Man.
Yeah, we have AI do that every show now, and I'm loving the responses we're getting. So thank you, Josh, for going the extra mile to do it.
I also liked it. You used all the photos that you use. They're good photos, but like most of them are from like 5 years ago when I had hair, and as you can see, I'm very bald now. So,
we got two versus one here.
Yeah.
That's you know what we use whatever we can get. We scrape it. We try to like. I want people to. The point of the show is to get to know people, and then we learn on the side. I care about who you are as a person, and I want to introduce you to everybody. Gavi Hacohen is our guest tonight. He's a cult expert, and he has a podcast, Leaving Eden. I don't know if you have the link. We can put it up. If not, we'll get it up. It'll be in down below later as well. Tell us about the Leaving Eden podcast. What do you do there?
So, it's a show that I co-host with my friend Sadie Carpenter. Sadie was raised as a member of the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. It's a very extreme sect of Christianity. Like, are you familiar with the Duggars? Are you familiar with 19, 18, 17, however many kids and counting?
After 2, I stopped. You know,
well,
3's too many. Stop. I'm the youngest of 5. Like once you like cross that line, you're just insane.
Well, that's a lot of kids, but you know, in that world, you would be having church members say, "Oh, so when's the next one on the way?" So that's the world that she grew up in. Is like maybe half a step less insane than the world of the Duggars and that kind of world. She only had 2 siblings, but she was raised in such a very extreme patriarchal form of Christianity. You know, she was raised in a community where women weren't allowed to wear pants because that was seen as a man's garment. So if you're a woman, you have to wear a skirt that goes like all the way past your knees.
Yeah, my sister went to a church where the pastor tried instituting that. My sister, for a short while, refused to wear pants.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She that was like one of the final straws, though. I think she shortly after that married a military guy and moved away from the state to get away from them all. I think so.
Yeah, people will do that. So she was raised in that. You know, it's a very repressive environment, especially if you're a young woman. And, you know, she grew up in that environment and that's all that she ever knew. When she was about 20, she was attending Bible college and she'd been having some questions about the validity of all of the doctrines, everything that she'd been learning in her church. Namely, one of the things that she was taught was that, excuse me. Sorry, I just ate. One of the things that she was taught was that if you're gay or if you're bisexual, then either that's like a demonic attachment or something had to happen to you to make you that way. And she sort of started realizing that she was bisexual and understanding, oh, well, nothing happened to me that would have made me that way.
Therefore.
And you know, nothing. Like I can't have a demonic attachment because, you know, I was raised in this church environment. I followed all the rules. I did everything right. And that sort of started causing some questions for her. She was also having questions with regards to like their salvation theology, in that she had issues with the idea that, you know, people who had never even heard of Jesus would be doomed to hell because they'd never heard of Jesus, and how that was just not fair. But she was being taught basically that you have to do that in order to try to influence them to want to go to be missionaries, to go to places where they might not have heard of Jesus, as very much as like a control tactic. So she was having questions about this, and she was about 20 years old at Bible college. And the guy who was the basically in charge of the whole denomination, was found to be sexually abusing a 16-year-old. And that really caused everything that she'd been feeling to snowball. And so she got out. And that must have been back in, like, I want to say 2012, 2013. I met her in 2018 or 2019 when we were working together. We, just had a job. She was my coworker. And we were both interested in religion. We were both interested in these sorts of things because, she was raised how she was raised. I was raised Jewish, but in Portland, Oregon, where people aren't that religious. And so I had a much more secular upbringing that she did. And so we both would have conversations about this from different angles. And when the pandemic hit, we decided that we would start a podcast together and we would talk about this stuff. And we've been doing it for about 5 years now. And
it's great to see the things that were created during COVID and that are still going on. And we're kind of one of those stories as well.
Yeah. Well, it's fantastic. I know so many people that really either they got a hobby or they got a new job or they got really into something during
skill.
that. Yeah, a new skill. And now it's like their favorite thing. And it's fantastic. Doing a podcast is like my main job now.
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Awesome. Yeah. There's so many people who have stories that are so similar to what she went through. And so we use this and her really culty upbringing to talk about what she went through. And we talk about religion. We talk about the branch of fundamentalism that she dealt with. We also talk about just like religion and theology. We also talk about other cults. Like we have episodes where we talk about Jonestown, and we have episodes where we talk about the Branch Davidians. We did one recently where we talked about, do you know who Tony Alamo is? That
sounds real familiar.
Back in the 1980s, he made these jackets, the Tony Alamo jackets. They were a big fashion statement, and they would have like palm trees on them, and they would say like California. Yes. Or Michael Jackson wore one on the cover of Bad. That was a Tony Alamo jacket. But Tony Alamo was running a cult, and he had those jackets made with child labor from cult members. So we did one about
a greater way to save money than just somewhere in an island nation.
Well, wow. Apparently the kids were the best at it because their fingers were so small, because they could really rhinestone the jackets up if you needed them to, and do all the sequins and the beads and stuff. So we've been doing the show for about 5 years now, nearly 5 years. And over that time, I have gone from somebody who, like at the start of the show, I started out where I was trying to just ask dumb questions. You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't know about something,
I do it on this show too. Like
you have to ask the basic questions and things like that.
Sure.
And now, for 5 years, we've been doing this, and now like I've actually been in documentaries and as like a cult expert in documentaries now. And so
you do it long enough. That's whatever the rule is, however many hours you put into something.
Yeah.
And if you're serious about it and you care about it, I think that's the big thing. Whenever I'm comfortable calling somebody an expert, is that they put the time in. Do they care about the subject? Is it just like, I'm going to write another book on this new programming language, or I'm going to write another book on this particular tree, whatever it might be. Like, but are you really the expert, or are you just trying to sell a book? I like the people that I lived in it for this, and I plan on it for a long time. So yeah, I get that. We have a ghost hunter expert who I love the guy because it's his. He has an IT job like me, but it's his thing. He breathes it. He lives it. He's been on TV shows talking about it. He talks to people every moment he has, I think, that he gets to. It's a passion, and I get that from you.
Yeah. I mean, it's so fascinating because the more you learn about this topic, the more you see aspects of coercive control everywhere in the world. And excuse me, I just ate dinner a few minutes ago. But you see aspects of the coercive control that is present in cults and cult groups in a lot of places where you wouldn't think that it would show up.
Yeah, I was in advertising a long time ago, advertising marketing, and I keep reminding people that the number one job of advertising is to change your mind. That's the only reason advertising exists. You might not want a Big Mac right now, but I'm going to teach you to have a Big Mac. Here's a picture of one, and you know that smell, and I'm going to use this soft voice to try to get it. It's advertising is part of they go hand in hand for me. And then it gets scary when I think that everything that we see throughout every day of our lives on every screen, on every printed media is in part brought to you by advertising, if not completely. Like the ads that show up on your screen, the way that they advertise to get it into your hand. Advertising, whose job is to change your mind, is in your face almost every waking minute.
I mean, ads pay for part of my rent, so
yeah,
like,
and I'm part of the problem too. But yeah, I think there's that the way that cults work and the way that human brain works and the psychology behind it all. There's so much overlap. I don't think advertising is a cult necessarily, but I could see like the way that it's used. The way the psychology
the messaging and the propaganda and the techniques are there.
Yeah. And how do you change a mind?
Yeah.
Especially if it doesn't want to. I think it's easier sometimes. Well, you anger them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things I actually have on something I wanted to talk to you about. How do cults generally get started? Like what's the seed? It's usually one person, I assume, but what's something that maybe we should identify what a cult is first.
Okay. So a cult is a coercive group. It is a group that uses coercive control to control a person or a bunch of people. Actually, you know what I can do? I'll share this link in the chat right now. How we in this field discuss cults is and identify them is use the bite model. The bite model was developed by Stephen Hassan, who is one of the leading cult experts in the world. He joined the Moonies in the 1970s, also known as the Unification Church. They were the Church of Sun Young Moon. Yeah, it's kind of a mouthful. He then
Thank you, Josh.
he was in the Moonies, and he got out and then decided to devote the rest of his life into identifying cults, identifying this coercive control, and really like listing it out in a way that would make it identifiable to other people so that they could label these groups as cults and as groups of authoritarian control. And so he defines authoritarian control in 4 different ways. And so there's 4 different basic techniques. There's behavior control, there's information control, there's thought control, and there's emotion control. And those are basically the 4 ways in which cults or coercive or cult groups have power over individuals. So behavior control could be something as like it's defined as regulating a person's physical reality. So that could be anything from telling you how to eat, how to dress, what hairstyles are appropriate, to who you're allowed to have sex with and who you're not allowed to have sex with. Or it could be like kidnapping and torture and beating, or it could be imprisonment and not letting you leave. It's
every type of control,
right? And so just because something does like tells you, oh, you have to dress this way, you have to eat this way if you're a member of this group, that doesn't make it a cult. It has to have all 4 of the aspects in order for it to really be a cult.
Otherwise a private school would be a cult. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying that there's no private schools or there's no like groups within schools, like like certain fraternities, I think definitely exhibit cult-like behavior, especially the ones that are where there's huge problems with sexual violence at a lot of these Greek organizations on college campuses. That those could definitely be qualified as cults, in my opinion. So information control is where things get interesting here, because it's not just like information control like you think of as with cult propaganda and cult brainwashing. Because you can have a closed information environment where the only pieces of information that you're allowed to consume are information that is pre-approved, and that strengthens the regime that is essentially state media.
Right.
There can also be the aspect of using a culture of informing on other people, a culture of snitching on other people in order to create a mistrust within other members, so that people don't know that who they can go to talk about problems that they're having, because it might get them in trouble. So
a nice healthy dose of paranoia.
Yeah, so the paranoia also helps keep people in control. The thought control goes beyond information control. So the thought control is telling you, it's trying to make it so that the way that you perceive reality is through the lens that the group wants you to perceive reality. So you have to accept their version of reality as reality. So that might be accepting that, I'm trying to think of an example. Like if you were in an extreme fundamentalist cult, a religious cult, then you might be encouraged to think of everything in your life and go through everything in your life as a fight between God and the devil. So so if you look at something and you think about something, you think, is this from God or is this from the devil? And it encourages you to think about things as either all black or all white. So either all good or all bad. There's also a lot of thought-stopping cliches. So you might be taught a turn of phrase where if you think something wrong, then you think this turn of phrase, and it makes you, it's a thought-stopping cliche. So I think a good example of this would be like, just to use a Bible verse, like the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. So if you were in a really culty church, they would tell you the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked if you really want something that is not something that the church wants for you.
Okay.
So you would think, so it's like, oh, I want this, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that would be against the church. Oh, I want to watch this movie and the church tells me that I shouldn't be watching this movie. Well, the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. And that's just the devil trying to get me, to try to get me to watch this movie. And that's how the devil's going to get me. And so it makes you doubt yourself and doubt your own thoughts and doubt your own ability to comprehend what's happening to you.
And more than likely pick what they wanted you to pick in the first place rather than have a decision.
Exactly. And then emotion control is doing similar things to that, except with emotions. So there's good emotions and there's bad emotions. So they might say you're not allowed to feel anger when XYZ thing happens to you, because, or like, like you're not allowed to feel anger when something bad happens to you in the church because that's God's will. But if you see something outside the church that you think is that stokes your righteous anger, if you see the world being not the way that the church says that it should be, then that righteous anger is okay, and in fact it's encouraged. Or they might encourage you to only feel joy, and if you feel bad emotions, then that's you not being properly not properly grateful for the things that you have in your life, if you are ever unhappy about that. They might use, guilt, shame, fear to get you to do the things that they want and teach you that you should be feeling guilty all the time because you're worthless. And only by our group do you have any amount of value. You can go to Dr. Hassan's website, freedomofmind.com, where he has all of this stuff laid out. But I think the big distinction here is that the first two aspects, the behavior control and the information control, are a thing that the group can enforce on you. But the thought control and the emotion control are something that you have to enforce on yourself. That's where self-brainwashing happens, rather than just being brainwashing that somebody else is doing to you. So in order for something to be a cult, it has to have all four of those things.
All four.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I was going to say, can you think of any examples of somebody that would have four that isn't? But yeah, let's. I really know is I'm fascinated by the idea of how a cult kind of starts. Obviously, my thought is a person wanted to do it, but how do they grow from small numbers of? Because I think one of the things that I sense in most of those things were that you need a group of people to help monitor a new person. You need a group of people to reinforce things. You need different people to kind of surround them, so to speak. So how do they go from that one guy? He finds two or three, I guess, people that are interested in this. How do they grow it? What's that model? Is there been studies on that? Like, what's that spark?
You would be shocked to learn that a lot of people who end up being cult leaders are just low rent scammers who things got out of hand.
Really? Like a bad sitcom plot. Like, I don't know, these people started giving me money and then they brought some friends.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. I was telling you
I wanted to do this as a kid.
I was telling you about Tony Alamo.
Nice bring back.
Yeah, I was telling you about Tony Alamo, and his wife was a woman named Susan Alamo, and they started their church together. They started their ministry together. What Susan Alamo was doing before she met Tony was she was in California, and when she and her daughter needed food or they needed money or something, they would do a church. So what they would do is they would put on dirty clothes and go to a church and sit in the back and then have a planned divine revelation and then say, we need money so that we can go minister to people in XYZ place. And the people in the church would give them money. And they were running this scam at tons of churches in Southern California. And then she met Tony, who also figured out that if you were running scams like this, then you could scam church people because they were generous and they would be willing to help you if they thought that you were really going to go out and do good in the world. And they met each other and decided that they were going to sort of start their own ministry together. And it got so big and so crazy that they ended up having like mansions and they had compounds. Like, you can go, if you go and look it up right now, look up the mansion that was the Tony and Susan Alamo mansion in Arkansas, and the mausoleum that Susan Alamo's body was in for the amount of time before the body got stolen. That's a whole other story. It's crazy. You would be shocked at how many of these people just started out as like low rent scammers and things got out of hand.
I mean, that was a good scam that she had, because
the
way that churches work, you're generally in one church every week. You're not visiting other churches. So she could do the same exact thing at a church next door. And maybe if somebody talked about it at like a community picnic, they would say, oh, we had that same woman. And then they might figure it out. But like, spreading it out even a little bit would probably save your, wow.
And this was back in like the 1960s, and this was before the internet, so people couldn't like post about it on the heart-shaped pool. Yeah, this was a cult headquarters. This here, they got rich. They got real rich off this. But what they would do when they were trying to get members is they would go on the streets of Hollywood and they would find homeless people, and they would say, "We will give you a meal and a place to stay. Come with us on our bus to our church out here in the valley." And they get the homeless people to come out with them and they feed them. And then they would put the people to work and they would send them to jobs and basically say, "We'll give you a place to stay, but you have to give us all of the money from your job."
Oh, right.
And, or, you'll work here and we'll get you off drugs, but all of your money, you have to donate it back to the church. And in return for that, you eat and you have a place to sleep and you can be part of our ministry. And they did that. And they got a lot of people doing that. And then you basically just have free labor. And they were using the free labor and the free labor of the children of these people to make these jackets that were wildly popular, but they were made using child labor. Of course,
there was like they went with jackets.
Yeah.
Not artwork, not like it's like, let's do jackets.
They had a lot of businesses. They had I believe a mattress wholesaling company. Just
all right, you've convinced me. I'm buying some books on this. This is incredible stuff.
Tony and Susan Alamo, look it up. They had I believe that one time Tony Alamo had did he have a restaurant? I can't remember.
It sounds like something here on Dave Letterman. Our guest at the Dave Letterman show, eat at Tony Alamo's fine dining restaurant. Like, it sounds like a restaurant.
Well, they had a big like televangelism ministry. They had a TV show. You can go up on YouTube and look up videos of Tony and Susan Alamo or Tony Alamo singing. Because before he was a Christian scammer, he wanted to be a musician. And he was trying to be a musician.
Is that a common thread?
I mean, David Koresh was also a musician.
Jim Jones, I thought, was interested in music, and then obviously
and killing
Manson.
people. Yeah, Charles Manson.
He's recorded with famous people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, but look at him.
Like he's straight off a hee-haw too.
This is like so 70s. This is so like Rhinestone Cowboy.
Peak.
But like, look at him. He looks like Glenn Campbell, or he looks like
Glenn Campbell if he couldn't poop for a week. Is he dead? I don't want to get sued by that.
Yeah, Glenn Campbell I think died a couple years ago.
No, this guy.
Yeah, he's dead. He went to jail forever for being a pedophile.
Oh, good. Fuck him.
There's unfortunately one of the things about a lot of these cults is that there is a lot of child sexual abuse that goes on.
It just
yeah.
Like
I mean, it's awful.
I don't like I never understood anybody who goes, it's a topic for another show, who goes in that direction knowing how they're going to get caught. You know, if you're into that thing, you're going to get caught. The
reality is that a lot of people don't.
I get that some don't, but I'm just hopeful that someday they will, like everybody else. Like I'm hoping, like it's something in me just wants to see them all burned. Have a great one. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Be safe out there. Treat each other well.